In the modern world, borders are everywhere. They divide countries, cultures, languages, and political systems. Most borders are marked by fences, checkpoints, and immigration offices. Some are crossed every day by millions of people traveling for work, tourism, or trade. But there is one border on Earth that is unlike any other. A border where soldiers stand only meters apart. A border where millions of landmines remain buried beneath the soil. A border where watchtowers, cameras, and sensors constantly scan for movement. And a border where a single mistake could ignite a conflict involving some of the most powerful militaries on the planet. This is not a border between distant enemies separated by oceans. Before we dive deeper into this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more documentaries about history, geopolitics, and the most fascinating places on Earth. And now let's explore one of the most tense borders ever created. There is a place on this planet where two armies stand only a few steps apart, where soldiers stare at each other through binoculars, where loudspeakers once blasted propaganda across barbed wire fences, and where a single misunderstanding could potentially trigger a war involving nuclear weapons. This is not a battlefield in a distant desert or jungle. It is a narrow strip of land stretching roughly 250 kilometers long and about 4 kilometers wide across the Korean peninsula. Yet within this small stretch of land lies one of the most tense and politically charged boundaries in modern history. On one side stands South Korea, a modern democratic nation connected to the global economy. On the other side lies North Korea, one of the most isolated and secretive countries on Earth. Two nations, two political systems, two completely different realities, separated by a thin line called the Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ, the division of Korea. To understand why this border exists, we need to go back more than a century. For thousands of years, Korea existed as a single cultural and political entity. The Korean peninsula had its own kingdoms, traditions, and identity. But in 1910, everything changed. Japan officially annexed Korea and began a harsh colonial rule that lasted for 35 years. During this period, Korean culture and language were suppressed. Many Koreans were forced into labor or military service under the Japanese Empire. When World War II ended in 1945, Japan surrendered and its colonial empire collapsed. Korea was suddenly free. But freedom came with uncertainty. The global power balance was shifting rapidly, and two new superpowers emerged after the war: the United States and the Soviet Union. Instead of allowing Korea to immediately rebuild as one nation, the peninsula became a strategic concern for both powers. To manage the situation quickly, American officials proposed a temporary division along the 38th parallel, an imaginary line cutting across the middle of Korea. The Soviet Union would accept the surrender of Japanese forces in the north. The United States would do the same in the south. At the time, the decision was meant to be temporary. Few expected this administrative line to become a permanent border. But as the Cold War began to take shape, the division hardened. Two rival governments emerged. In the north, a communist state was formed under Kim Il-sung, supported by the Soviet Union. In the south, a separate government aligned with Western powers formed under Syngman Rhee. By 1948, Korea had officially split into two countries: the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, commonly known as North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, known as South Korea. Both governments claimed to be the legitimate ruler of the entire peninsula, and neither accepted the division. The peninsula had become a flashpoint in the growing Cold War. The Korean War, the tension finally exploded on June 25, 1950. North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel in a massive military invasion of South Korea. Within days, tanks and infantry pushed deep into the south. Cities fell rapidly. The South Korean military struggled to resist the advance. Within weeks, North Korean forces had captured large portions of the country, including their capital city of Seoul. South Korean and American troops were forced into a desperate defensive position around the port city of Busan. But the conflict quickly expanded beyond Korea itself. The United Nations, led primarily by the United States, intervened to defend South Korea. Soon after, China entered the war on the side of North Korea. What began as a civil war became a massive international conflict. Millions of soldiers from multiple nations fought across the peninsula. Over the next 3 years, the front lines moved back and forth repeatedly. Entire cities were destroyed. Villages vanished. Mountains and farmland became battlegrounds. Families were separated as people fled the fighting. The human cost was staggering. By the time the war ended, more than 3 million people had died. Millions more were wounded or displaced. Despite the enormous loss of life, neither side achieved a decisive victory. The war had reached a stalemate, the armistice and the creation of the DMZ. In 1953, representatives from North Korea, China, and the United Nations signed the Korean Armistice Agreement. The agreement stopped the fighting, but it did not end the war. No peace treaty was ever signed. Technically, North and South Korea remain at war even today. As part of the armistice, both sides agreed to create a buffer zone between their forces. This zone became known as the Demilitarized Zone. Despite the name, the DMZ is anything but demilitarized. In reality, it is surrounded by massive military presence. On both sides of the border stand hundreds of thousands of troops. Barbed wire fences stretch for kilometers. Watchtowers scan the landscape. Sensors detect movement. And beneath the soil lie millions of landmines placed decades ago. Even animals wandering too close to the border can trigger alarms. The DMZ has become one of the most fortified borders in the world. The most tense point, Panmunjom. At the center of the DMZ lies one of the most unusual places on Earth, a small village known as Panmunjom, also called the Joint Security Area. This is the only place where soldiers from North and South Korea stand face to face, only a few meters apart. Blue conference buildings sit directly on top of the borderline. Inside these rooms, negotiations between the two Koreas have taken place for decades. The atmosphere here is unlike anywhere else. South Korean guards stand in rigid taekwondo-style stances, their faces expressionless, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. They are trained not to react to insults or provocations from the other side. On the northern side, North Korean soldiers watch just as closely. Every movement is monitored, every gesture analyzed. The tension is constant. The axe murder incident. Panmunjom has witnessed several dangerous incidents, but one of the most famous occurred in 1976. At the time, a large tree inside the DMZ blocked the line of sight between UN checkpoints. American and South Korean personnel arrived to trim the tree. North Korean guards confronted them and demanded they stop. A confrontation followed. Suddenly, North Korean soldiers attacked using axes taken from the work crew. 2 U.S. Army officers were killed. The shocking event became known as the Korean axe murder incident. For several days afterward, the situation nearly escalated into a full-scale war. The United States responded with a massive show of force. Bombers flew overhead, aircraft carriers moved into the region. Hundreds of troops returned to the site and finished cutting down the tree under heavy military protection. The crisis eventually subsided, but it demonstrated just how fragile the peace truly was. Defections and escapes. Over the years, the DMZ has also been the scene of dramatic escape attempts. Some North Korean soldiers have defected by running across the border toward the south. These moments are incredibly dangerous. In 2017, a North Korean soldier drove a vehicle toward the border before abandoning it and sprinting across the Joint Security Area. North Korean guards fired dozens of bullets at him as he ran. He collapsed on the southern side but survived after emergency surgery in South Korea. Incidents like this highlight the extreme risks people take to escape the North. Two different worlds. Today, the contrast between North and South Korea is dramatic. South Korea has transformed into one of the most advanced economies in the world. Its capital city, Seoul, is home to global technology companies, modern infrastructure, and a vibrant culture that has spread worldwide through music, film, and entertainment. Meanwhile, North Korea remains one of the most isolated nations on Earth. Under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, the government tightly controls media, travel, and political expression. The country has also invested heavily in military power, including nuclear weapons and long-range missiles. One of the most striking images of this contrast comes from space. Satellite images taken at night show the Korean peninsula glowing with lights in the south, but the north appears almost completely dark. A stark visual representation of two vastly different systems. A wildlife sanctuary born from war. Ironically, the DMZ has also become something unexpected, a sanctuary for wildlife. Because humans rarely enter the area, nature has flourished inside the border zone. Forests, wetlands, and grasslands have slowly reclaimed the land. Rare species now live within the DMZ. These include endangered cranes, deer, wild boar, and dozens of bird species. Some scientists believe the area has become one of the most preserved natural environments in East Asia. A strange paradox. A place created by war has unintentionally become a refuge for nature. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to see more stories about history, geopolitics, and the world's most fascinating places, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, which border or conflict should we explore next? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.